Narcissistic individuals have no difficulties in overstepping your boundaries because that is all they know and that is all they do. However, what makes a narcissist truly sadistic is their nature of provoking you into getting an emotional reaction to their abuse and then using that reaction of yours to accuse you for being overly sensitive or being abusive towards them. Have you ever been in the presence of someone who would constantly devalue, belittle, humiliate, and put you down? And they know for sure that it will get to you. However, they would not stop at it because they are looking to elicit a reaction from you. And when you finally react to that abuse, you will be considered or called for being overreacting, oversensitive, or in some cases, they would even play dumb as if not understanding where that response or reaction was coming from and why you were reacting the way you did. Now, look out for that smirk of satisfaction that you would see on their face when they finally get that emotional reaction that they are looking for. Because a narcissist gets a rush from that emotional reactivity that is caused by their abuse and causes you to crack or finally snap. They take great pleasure in seeing you lose your emotions and getting triggered because they thrive on the idea of having power, control, and dominance over your emotions. Raji, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. This channel is dedicated to talking about healing from childhood trauma, narcissistic abuse, and attachment styles, which I have worked on myself over the last couple of years without any professional help. And I have dedicated to starting this channel to share about my own personal healing journey, hoping that this information can help those who are currently on their own healing journey. And if you're new here, I would really appreciate if you could hit like and subscribe to help me grow my channel, and also to make sure that you do not miss out on any new videos which I post on a weekly basis. In today's video, we are going to look at 4 ways how a narcissist can provoke you. Having this understanding and looking out for these signs would provide you with the awareness that would help you to better manage your own emotions for the sake of your own mental and emotional well-being, because you cannot control their reaction. However, you can have control over how you react towards them. One way to know is if you find yourself acting out of character. If you find yourself acting out of character, doing or saying things that you know you will never do in any given circumstances because that is simply just not your personality. But if you find yourself behaving or acting a certain way more than once in the presence of a particular person, then it's highly likely you are dealing with someone with extremely toxic character. When you're dealing with a narcissist, they often push you to test your boundaries, and remember, they despise your good qualities and your good traits that you possess. So they attempt to push you to react in a way that makes you question yourself, question your own integrity. And often this is an attempt to have control over your emotions because they take pleasure in being able to have control over your emotions. And this often happens more often than not when you are likely busy with something important. Let's say if you had a busy day with work, you have something important that's going on, you are engaged with a very important project that is going to be due soon, or maybe when you are resting, or maybe when you are just in a good mood. Now this is the time when they would do something to provoke you to get a reaction which would cause you to react in a way that you don't usually do. Now, just to quote an example, recently I was speaking to a friend of mine who goes a long way back, and he was sharing with me that he was dating someone, and he told me that, Vina, I am starting to behave or react like this person, and I am never like that. That is just not my personality. I've never behaved this way. I have never done something like this. And I am just so confused that I'm starting to actually pick up this person's behavior, and I'm starting to mirror what they are actually doing to me, because this person is like causing me a lot of emotional distress and provoking me to do or say a certain things. Now, if you find yourself dealing with someone that is pushing you to react in a way that you mostly won't. Now, understand this, it's very natural for us to experience, anger, frustration, and whatnot. And anger is a healthy emotional response. It's just part of a human experience that we all experience all sorts of emotions. However, I am here talking about you acting out of character doing things that you normally would not do or say when you are angry, when you're upset or frustrated. Now, if you find yourself doing a certain thing, saying a certain things, behaving in a way that you don't even recognize yourself, now this is where you really need to hold yourself back and see where this is coming from, because more often than not, you are actually mirroring their toxic behavior. You are losing a sense of your own identity and you're taking on their toxic traits. And this can happen when you have prolonged exposure with someone who is highly toxic. So whenever you catch yourself acting a certain way that you were never familiar with, you had never done before, then this is a huge red flag. Be very, very careful. This is where you need to reassess the situation and see what can be done and where you can set strong boundaries. And if there is an opportunity for you to exit that connection, then you will need to take that steps forward. Now, if you can't, in certain cases it's not that easy to walk away from certain connection, then you will need to establish other boundaries, like having minimal interaction, going gray rock, or just asserting strong boundaries. Narcissistic people are notorious when it comes to criticizing, belittling, devaluing, or humiliating you, and they often do it in the most insidious way. It's often very carefully crafted and disguised as having good intentions, of having the best of intentions, but they know exactly how to get under your skin. And remember, the narcissistic people that you have encountered aren't people that just come into your life and start abusing you overnight emotionally. They are smart. They take the time to learn about you, to learn about your vulnerabilities, to understand your insecurities, and they gain as much intel as they can, which is then used against you in the cycle of abuse and devaluation. And once you enter the cycle of abuse and devaluation, there is simply no turning back. There is no going back to before, and this cycle will never end until you finally exit that relationship and choose to go no contact with them. The next sign is the subtle emotional abuse in the presence of other people, and they do this to get a reaction from you. However, in such an environment, when the victim is put in the presence of many others, usually the emotional reaction is somewhat limited or restricted, because they know enough that they can get away with the things that they do and say in the presence of others who are likely there to enable them or further support them and dismiss what the victim is actually feeling. And this is really hurtful and very painful, because a lot of times there is simply just no justice for the other person who had been on the receiving end, because someone with such high toxic trait would always know how to charm their way around, and they would say things like, I didn't mean it like that, or it was just a joke. They would often like to disguise it as a joke, or they would just go like, oh, I'm just letting them know what is going on. But what they are actually doing is using that very thing which makes you the most vulnerable in that particular moment to put you down and not give you enough room or space to even have an actual reaction. Because let's be honest, for someone who is somewhat emotionally healthy and you have a certain personality, you do not want to lose that in the presence of others. How many people really want to turn around and react to such abuse and come off as rude and disrespectful when there are many other people present around you? Because that's the whole point. The intention of this subtle abuse in the presence of others is meticulously curated to really make you feel bad enough, but they also know that they have enough support around that they can easily get away and get a pass. And they also know the fact that if you're going to react to it, there are people there to actually back them up and try to talk you into letting it go, just let it slide, and not to be overly sensitive or not be overly critical to what they say. And this is the whole purpose, is to really corner you to not actually have a reaction. Or in a case where a lot of victims would actually say that their emotions are often invalidated. You are not allowed to actually have a reaction and tell someone that this was not very nice and how that made you feel. I'll say this though, that unfortunately this subtle emotional abuse and provocation is a very common dynamic in a family setting, especially when there are other family members present or when there are relatives present, because they find ways to insert or to just slide this little remarks in an attempt to make you feel really bad, to devalue you in front of everyone else and make you feel powerless, because a lot of times you would not want to react to this person in the presence of others. You don't want to come across rude or arrogant or disrespectful, but someone who is healthy enough in that group will be able to notice, even if they are not outwardly supporting you, they would be able to see it and notice that what is being said is just not a very nice thing. Now, let me give you an example. Now, I had a personal experience with a friend. So we were out having dinner, and this a friend of mine was actually talking about how one of our, okay, so this is actually a coworker, not really a friend. This coworker of mine was actually apparently bad mouthing me and talking bad about me and making remarks about my appearance, about my body, and about my performance, about my work and whatnot. And this person here is actually saying this to another colleague of mine who is actually a friend of mine. And it was such an uncomfortable conversation to have, because we were just having dinner and this person is telling my friend here that, do you know that, this person said this about me? They were saying this, they were saying this, they were doing this and whatnot. And I was like so confused as to why that conversation was even necessary in the first place, because there is no relevance for such conversation. And when I actually turned around and asked my friend that, hey, like, why are you even talking about this now? Like, I mean, why are you actually telling her? She was like, oh no, I just have to let her know, since she's your friend, I'm just sharing with her that this person is saying this about you. And it was just so awkward and confusing for me and my other friend. And clearly my friend here was extremely uncomfortable with that conversation, because it was clear to us that she was just finding ways to devalue me and put me down. And obviously in the presence of another person here, I was going to have a very limited reaction. And obviously my reaction was somewhat normal and healthy when I was like, hey, like, why are we even talking about this? And afterwards my friend told me that, okay, you know what, I'm going to stay away from this person. Like, it just makes absolutely no sense. It's like literally gossiping about you in front of your face to another person that's actually close to you, which makes no sense. And my friend literally just kept her distance from this particular person. So this is again here a fine example of what a subtle provocation and put down can look like. So they do this in the presence of others because they know that the reaction is going to be very limited. It is somehow to make you feel powerless while they still have an upper hand on your emotions, on making you feel just horrible. I mean, who really wants to hear that someone is bitching about them? I mean, I'm sorry to use that word. I hope YouTube will not censor this. But why would someone be excited to hear that? And that would not be the first time that I had heard that from this person. So you get the gist of it. That's what I meant by subtle provocation. Now, this can again look very different in a lot of scenarios. So this is what a subtle provocation looks like. Last sign to look out for is guilting you to overlook their abuse and to shift the blame, making you question your own integrity and sanity. And this is arguably one of the most exhausting traits in a toxic connection with a narcissist, because they know well how to turn on the charm and wear their victim coat to shelter themselves from that emotional winter that is coming their way as a consequences of their action for the emotional abuse that they had caused. So what they do now, they know they have pushed your buttons and they somehow have to now turn it back to you, making it look like you are the one who is holding grudges against them. And they have to make you feel guilty about behaving a certain way towards them, because you have now apparently done something that doesn't seem to appreciate their efforts. So let's say now you have had an argument or disagreement, and they have obviously done something that has pushed your buttons, that caused you a reaction that you wouldn't otherwise have reacted, and now they hold that reaction as a leverage, and they would come back and offer some sort of superficial apology. And understand this, with a narcissist, they are never going to find a healthy way of resolving an issue or conflict. They are never going to come and sit with you and have a discussion and offer an honest apology and meet you with compassion. That is just beyond their emotional capacity. That's just not something that they are capable of. So instead, they would resort to doing something more superficial. So they would probably try to make it up by buying you a gift. They might get you flowers, or they might buy you your favorite food, or they might probably take you to a restaurant and try to, make up with a nice dinner or something like that. And then they would go like, oh, you're still upset, you're still talking about it. When you try to actually get to the root cause of the issue, they are now going to dismiss you and invalidate you, and they're going to turn that back against you and say that, you're not letting it go, you're making such a big deal of it. I've already apologized, I've already said sorry, look, you don't even appreciate my effort, I've done this for you, I've done this, you know how much effort went into getting this, do you know how hard was it for me to get this restaurant, because I just wanted to make it up to you, and now you're not even appreciating my effort, you are so ungrateful, you just can't seem to let things go, you tend to hold grudges. Now they turn everything back and shift that blame onto you, making you question yourself if you are indeed being too hard on them, when they are in fact trying to lean in and offer an apology by making it up to you, but in fact they have never really tried to apologize and address the root cause of the issue. Because understand, someone providing you gifts in an attempt to make it up to you is not going to resolve the issue, because what's happened in that conflict has obviously caused upset, has obviously caused some kind of resentment, and you need to talk it out to be able to resolve and move past that. But that often doesn't happen in a narcissistic relationship, because they aren't capable of that. They just tend to sweep things under the rug, and they would prefer to do something more superficial so that they can go around and claim that this is what they have done to make it up, but then you are not reciprocating, you're not appreciating the effort. So now you are being painted as the person who is showing attitude, who is being difficult, who is just not accepting their efforts, you are not appreciating, and whatnot. And this is extremely frustrating and exhausting. There's absolutely nothing you can do about it until you finally decide that you have had enough and you really do not want to engage in this kind of a relationship with this person anymore, and finally decide to cut ties and cut them loose and move away from that connection, keep a distance, gray rock, or just leave that connection completely. So again, these are some of the 4 ways a narcissist can provoke you to get you under your skin and cause a reaction. Because remember, these people get an adrenaline rush of having a control over your emotional reactivity from the abuse that they cause, and pushing you to the edge of your seat and causing you to crack and snap makes them feel powerful, makes them feel in control. They feel like they can dominate your emotions, they can toy around, that they have this leverage over your emotions gives them immense pleasure. It is such a sadistic thing to do to someone, especially if it's someone that is dear to you, but that's just how dysfunctional they are. So there's absolutely nothing much that you can do about that but to cut them loose.